Holy smokes. Holy smokes. We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please hit the subscribe button and open up your notifications. Turn them on. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends if you want to support this Rebel Outpost College Football, National College Football Program. Please hit the $ when you make a comment, and I will get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome into the studio that sits on the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, PATC community. Do not be afraid to become a legend in the chat room with your comments and with your phone calls. Later in the show, breaking news, massive breaking news. Pete Thamel's been reporting on it. Ross Dellenger just came out with an article on it. The reporting's a little bit different. Nothing is quite certain. Nothing is quite cemented, but it has to do with paying back, paying the house versus the NCAA lawsuit, and then paying forward compensation for the student athletes. It's wild. It's crazy. Holy smokes. A lot of cloak and dagger. A lot of political stuff being played out. Man, oh man, this Ross Dellenger article is on fire. And there was no way. I I was out of the house doing an errand, and I quickly turned that beast of a car around, come running back in the studio, told the moderator, who rules with an iron fist, the little general, we got to go live. We got to go live. We've been talking about this since before, but when it comes to this college football YouTube channel, we've been talking about student athletes getting higher compensation since episode 1. We also, when we broke the news of USC calling the Big Ten, when we broke the news for 3 months, we explained the reasons why. USC needed to get above the stratification line because they knew at some point, the revenue stratification line, because USC knew at some point they were going to be paying their student athletes directly, in some form, in some fashion. It's why Texas and Oklahoma call the SEC. It's why Florida State and Clemson are in Mecklenburg County, Pickens County, Leon County. It's the straw that has been stirring the drink. Everyone's trying to get to the highest ground possible that they can possibly get to, because this day was always going to come. We just didn't know in what fashion. But some of the stuff that Ross Dellenger reported tonight, holy smokes. Some schools, now a source is saying this, the source may end up being incorrect, but the source is saying that some schools in the Power 4 conferences, the Power 4, we're not talking about the G5, some schools in the Power 4 conference might say, we're out. Or at least being out in the sense of being able to go to the highest limit of this revenue sharing looks to be between $17 and $22 million. This is the new world. This is where we're heading. Now, I don't know if this whole compensation package, if this settlement, if this particular settlement, House versus the NCAA, I'm not sure it solves everything. I'm not sure about this cap, about this salary cap, this NIL in-house, whatever revenue sharing, whatever they're going to be calling it, cap. I'm not sure that's going to fly without some collective bargaining agreement between representatives of the student athletes and the schools and their conferences. But I know a lot of you disagree with me. That's fine. So I don't even know if this monumental change that is coming like a freight train, I don't even know if it's going to solve everything that it needs to solve. I mean, I don't know. And you know what? And if they could, if this whole, and we're going to go through it right now. The latest steam, the latest reporting, Ross Dellenger, Yahoo Sports. I guess if this monumental change can somehow get Congress on board, I don't know, during this election year, that's not going to happen, but maybe early next year, if they can carve out some special codification, I don't know. To me, the whole thing is a big gamble. A $2.7 billion gamble. But then again, if they don't settle the House versus the NCAA now, then they're going to be paying possibly more than $4 billion. Okay. Let's go. I want to thank everybody who has shown up at the beginning of this emergency PATC. Peek Around the Corner college football channel. I got to tell you, Mooncat, thank you for becoming a new member. Holy smokes. We have a new member, Mooncat. Cloak and Dagger, early peak. You are, Mooncat, hereby officially knighted Cloak and Dagger. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Mountaineer, for your generosity to the channel. Now, I am going to thank the following people. The following people for getting here at the beginning of a live show. Holy smokes, an emergency live show. Second live show we've done today. In fact, I did an episode in between the first live show and this live show, and YouTube is having a hard time processing it. By the time it gets kicked out to you, by the time episode 396 gets kicked out to you, it's going to be obsolete. But whatever. Kay Struthers, thanks for coming on in. Don in Kansas, early peak member. Sheep and Wolves Clothing, early peak member. Marcus Williams, early peak member. Basa in Chai is in the house. AMAC, David Kreitzer, Thomas, an actual duck. Quack, quack, y'all. An actual duck is in the house. Doug Steinhauser. 2 King Slots. Who will be out? I'm not even sure what the phrase "I'm out" even means. Not like they're not going to be entirely out, right? I mean, I'm just going to pick a school. Please don't be offended. Please don't be offended. I'm just going to pick a school out so we can talk about this. Iowa State Cyclones, they're not going to be out. They're not going to be out, right? They're just, maybe there's going to be some schools that are not going to be able to, not going to be willing to, they just can't spend all the way up at the highest part of the cap. Is that what they mean by they're out? I don't know. We're going to explore the article. We're going to open up the phone lines. Michael Uten, good evening. PATC doubleheader. Mr. Monkey says, Rock and Rant is in the house. Love me twice today. I am a big Jim Morrison fan, so that's a good one. Rock and Rant. R Webb is in the house. Sky is here. DP, Mr. Clemson Tiger. Mr. Monkey says, Jimmy. Gary is here. James Foster is in the house. Suzanne is here. Love the drum solo. This program, yes, the drum solo had to come out. It's not a goofy smile. It's not a goofy smile. It's this. It's the face. Okay. That's the same face I use when I sing. That's the same face I use when I dance with Mireya Hernandez Garcia Flugar. In fact, she always tells me, quit with the goofy smile. But it's not really goofy. It's just, you guys just don't understand. You do not understand. Carson is in the house. Skaven, yes, is here. Jeff Morgan is here. Laura Weiss, the Texas Tech Red Raider, is in the house. Bazoo, DP, somebody, big news. Uh-oh. Here's the moderator. Here is the moderator, the one who rules with an iron fist. Oh boy, buckle up, buckle up. Derek Marie is in the house. Expedition Greg. Matt Higgins. Super League will be self-selected. Interesting turn of phrase by the Alabama Crimson Tide, Matt Higgins. Interesting. Rick, Greg, do you ever take a break? I enjoy all your shows. When you're not on, I miss the PATC. I miss it as well. Yes, I do take breaks. The moderator, the little general, let me take some small breaks during the day. Keep chopping. Rutgers, Piscataway. Gotta pay if you want to play. Justin Lucas. It sounds like this settlement thing is going to happen fast. 40 days. And, you know, the ripple effect on this is so massive. We're not going to be able to completely put our arms around this story tonight. We're going to try. This is a very important live show. We're getting in on the ground floor. We're trying to figure this out. We're going to try to figure out. We're trying to give the peek around the corner. But even just, you know, if this thing happens in the next 40 days, like Justin Lucas believes it could, it brings a certain certainty to the future, a little bit, right? Cost, benefit, risk analysis. People can start putting numbers on the back of a napkin. People can look at their conference projections, their payouts, sponsorships, their local, internal, university athletic department, third-tier deals. And I'm not just talking about the TV. I'm talking about other stuff that these athletic departments do. Fundraisers, ticket prices, everything, right? Everything, especially the big bucket items in revenue, like media revenue. And then you look at, Clemson and Florida State doing what they're doing. What about North Carolina? Now, we reported to you exclusively, peek around the corner, about the money perch, galvanizing, coordinating, getting organized, pushing back, saying, look, we got to look out what is best for UNC Chapel Hill. Clemson's doing that. Florida State is doing that. Miami going to be looking at this and saying, what is the risk of going to the courts to challenge the ACC? I'm telling you, man, that risk is so low, it's below the floor. It's below the floor. DP, 17 to 22 million is not a lot of money for a football team's revenue share budget. 17 to 22 million is on top of what everybody's spending right now. That's not a lot of money for a few programs out there. It's a whole lot of money for a whole lot of programs. Of course it is. Of course it is. David Kreitzer, my gal thought we were eating out tonight, but she got PATCD'd. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Kreitzer's gal. Hopefully the little general did not read that comment. She's going to be upset. She might be upset that we're on tonight. Movie Time Blues, if anything, it might hasten realignment even faster. It might hasten consolidation even faster, which hastens realignment. No question about it. Terry Kane is in the house. Flux Flow is here. Looks like David is eating in tonight. Bazoo, didn't Texas A&M spend $50 million on NIL? A bunch of those kids never got paid, though. That's correct. Texas A&M is going to be able to afford whatever the deal is. The Architect is in the house. You have become my sporting news. I appreciate those kind words. The Architect. Devil Frog is here. Somebody is here. Richard Brookins is here. Tony Rodriguez is a listening. Kurt P is here. Rob Allen is here. Crab Cakes and Football, Mr. Terrapin. Foodie Memphis is in the house. Foodie Memphis is in the house. Mr. Spartan, Anthony Carlson. Oh my God, you are correct. Oh my God. I like this one. David Griffin. The chickens are roosting all over college football. Chickens have come home to roost. Stephen Vitt is in the house. LFG is here. Me versus Echo Chamber. Tuffy Duffy, here we go. Here we go. Xmas Talks, yo, 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 holy smokes. Immaculate. Mr. Hawkeye is in the house. RW, Lorenzo Haynes, Lee. 30 million a year is tough considering some conferences will be priced out. C. John, huge breaking news. Hold on to your butts. Holy smokes. Justin Lucas, Greg, I'm thinking a curing of the ACC. A whittling down, so to speak. ACC or the Big 12 may happen organically, depending on what Dellinger means by out. Yeah, I don't know what he means by that. Immaculate, I read Dellinger's whole article. This is going to be a very serious strain on quite a few athletic departments. No question about it. No question about it. Even my Minnesota Golden Gophers, even though we got that big Big Ten media deal, $20 million coming out of that athletic department. Man, we got debt. We've got debt at the University of Minnesota, ladies and gentlemen. We spend a lot of money each year on debt payment. Now we're going to be spending a little less money on debt payment. We're way out ahead of our debt payment schedule because we've been paying extra every year. But that extra payment, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be able to happen anymore. Xmas Talks, remember before NIL. A lot of that only was going to the schools for facilities. Now 20 million plus the 5 and 25 million NIL. That is up 50 million for some schools. Absolutely correct. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you so much for your super chat, Xmas Talks. I appreciate it. Great comment. Great comment. Okay. Here we go. Let's get into the article because I know we're going to take phone calls. I know people want to call in, express their disappointment, express their relief, express their excitement, express their worry. I think a lot of it's going to be worry for most of us college football fans. Let's pop it up here. Let's pop it up. Sources tonight. This was 1 hour ago. Big breaking news. New college athlete compensation model may cost power schools $300 million. $300 million each over 10 years. Holy smokes. Scottsdale, Arizona. We're going to go through this article. And then we're going to go directly to your super chats, membership comments, and to your phone calls. Super chats, membership comments, and then to your phone calls. I'm not going to talk anymore about it. I want to hear from you after we get through this article. Again, Ross Dellenger, the great Ross Dellenger, Yahoo Sports, reports tonight. Scottsdale, Arizona, a bag slung over his shoulder and luggage in his hand. Baylor coach Dave Aranda hustled down the main staircase at the Hyatt Gainey Ranch after the annual Big 12 conference meetings. He buzzed through the lobby for a quick hello and then jettisoned out of the door with the destination in mind. I'm going to see the Arizona Cardinals, he said, smiling. I got to learn how to do all this. A college coach or an administrator visiting a professional sports organization is not necessarily groundbreaking, but Aranda's visit, presumably to learn more about roster management and pay scale, is indicative of the times. Pay scale. Pay scale. When we're talking about this $17 to $22 million revenue sharing plan, how exactly is that revenue going to be shared throughout your athletic department? Is it completely, totally up to the school? If it is, the strategy behind this, the strategy behind on how much you spend for your football program, basketball program. Here in Minnesota, it's going to be hockey program. Oregon State, it might be the baseball program, right? If the school has complete authority, sovereignty to spend the money how they see fit, I'm telling you, it's going to be a different position than the athletic director, right? It's going to be like a capologist. It's going to be a general manager. The college sports industry is moving closer to the inevitable, a direct athletic compensation model. Something that we said had to happen the very first episode of this YouTube channel. It was our manifesto of 20 months ago. And industry executives continue to negotiate with plaintiff lawyers in the House antitrust case. Details of future compensation model, a necessary piece to any settlement agreement, continue to emerge. Those who shared details were granted anonymity as they were not authorized to speak about a proposed settlement that continues to undergo changes. Yahoo Sports have got their sources. While negotiations are active and have been for as many as 8 months, not a new revelation within the industry. Concept of the proposed new model are becoming more formalized as leaders work to meet a deadline set by the attorneys. The deadline is set by the attorneys. So time is of the essence. You got to get this done if you don't want to go into court and pay out more than $4 billion. This is a $2.7 billion settlement by some reports. Money figures are becoming clear. For those in the power conferences, the price tag is steep. The 10-year settlement agreement could cost each power school as much as $300 million over the decade. $30 million a year. That figure assumes a school meets what is believed to be, number one, the 17 to 22 million revenue distribution cap for athletes. Number two, at least 2 million in withheld NCAA distribution for back damages. Number three, as much as 10 million in additional scholarship costs related to an expansion of sport-specific roster sizes, a concept previously unpublicized. Holy smokes. As much as $10 million in additional scholarship costs. Expansion of sport-specific roster sizes. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, we're going above the 85 scholarship limit for football. We're going above the 85 scholarship limit for football. In possibly other sports, right? Possibly an expansion in baseball scholarships. The $30 million in basketball. The $30 million price tag, a startling figure for an industry that has only provided athletes with mostly non-cash resources. Is about 20% of the average athletic department budget for public schools in the ACC, Big Ten, SEC, and the Big 12. So, ladies and gentlemen, we got to start thinking. If your school, if your athletic department wants to put enough resources in to where you are paying at the very top of the salary cap. You're paying for all the expansion scholarships, probably in football and the other top revenue sports. If you're willing to do all of it, it's a $30 million price tag, not a $20 million. So we got to start thinking $30 million. $30 million. That is the impact. $30 million. Back to the Yahoo article. However, as reported earlier this week, the revenue sharing portion of the new model is permissive, meaning schools are not required to reach the cap or share revenue at all. Okay? You don't have to go all the way up to 20 million or whatever that cap's going to be. Schools will also they're going to be able to make decisions here. Discretion to expand scholarships or not across new roster limits expected to be implemented across all sanctioned sports. So you're going to have new roster limits across all sanctioned sports. You don't have to go all the way up to the limits on all the sports. While concepts are murky, I'm going to tell you something. This is going to lead to I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. As a content provider in college football, this whole thing is going to lead to so many new stories. We're going to be learning about athletic departments' decisions that they're not going to be similar with each other. They're going to be all different, except for the top revenue program athletic departments that are going to be able to do everything, right? And how they spend the money. Holy smokes. While concepts are murky and questions linger, a framework of a new model is becoming more visible and socialized with high-ranking administrators across the 4 power conferences. Meanwhile, that deadline Justin Lucas mentioned in the chat room, that deadline within the next 40 days is approaching quickly. What's the money? For months now, the college athletic world has prepared or perhaps braced itself for the removal of the NCAA's century-old amateurism rules, whether through an employment ruling, litigation settlement, or state law change. But there is still sticker shock in the figures slowly seeping from negotiations. Schools will have the opportunity to share millions in revenue with athletes, with a spending limit similar to a professional sport team salary cap. Estimates put the amount at 17 to 22 million per program, though the amount could fluctuate. The figure was determined through a percentage, roughly 22%, of an average of a Power 4 athletic department revenue streams, most notably ticket sales, television contracts, and sponsorships, not donations. 17 to 22 million per program. Separately, the NCAA is responsible for paying about $2.9 billion in back damages over 10 years. I believe ESPN, Pete Thamel, earlier today had the figure at $2.7 billion. But what's a couple $100 million difference? No big deal. The funds, some of which could be offset by insurance payments, are expected to come from the NCAA's annual distribution to schools, mostly from the NCAA men's basketball tournament, upward of $700 million annually. Power schools are expected to see a reduction in distribution by at least $2 million annually, but that figure too could fluctuate dramatically. So the NCAA basketball tournament that brings all this money in for the NCAA, This is the piggy bank that the NCAA is going to use to pay back on damages, House versus NCAA. And the schools are going to be paying, they're going to have payments withheld from them going forward that could see a reduction in distribution by at least $2 million annually. The final financial concept to any new model involves the implementation of roster limits and the expansion of scholarship across those limits. For instance, under current rules, the NCAA permits schools to distribute 11.7 scholarships across a baseball roster of 32 players. We know that the SEC has wanted to boost that up, right? They want more than that. Under the new model, schools may now choose to provide a scholarship to each roster position, however many are determined for that specific sport. The same for other sports, including football, which could see its roster limit actually reduced. The NCAA recently increased the football roster limit for preseason camp from 110 to 120. The expense of increasing scholarships is significant. Two power conference administrators told Yahoo Sports that they plan to add more than 100 additional scholarships at the expense of $9 to $10 million annually. Two power conference administrators. A portion of the additional scholarship expense may be counted toward the revenue sharing cap, but that too is a fluctuating figure. So a lot of these numbers are going to be changing all the time. Who's in? Who's in on this massive change that is coming around the corner in the next 40 days? Not every school's president or chancellor is in agreement on settling the lawsuit and adopting a new model for a variety of reasons explained in the Yahoo Sports story published earlier this week. The topic has generated plenty of spirited debate within meetings among conference presidents and athletic directors over the last year. The approval of any settlement likely needs a simple majority or supermajority vote from Conference Board of University Presidents. The approval of any settlement likely needs a simple majority or supermajority from a Conference Board of University Presidents. Interesting. The Big Ten does not surprise me. The Big Ten is most aligned in its desire to settle the suit, multiple sources tell Yahoo Sports. But as one administrator said, if one league settles, we all settle. The Big Ten, who had just received this massive new media deal, and I know a lot of people have been analyzing the 2022 revenue from each athletic department. Those numbers that came out this spring still does not include the Big Ten's new media deal. In next spring's numbers are not going to include SEC's new deal that starts July 1st. It lags 1 year behind. So that I have not spent any time analyzing the latest revenue figures from the athletic departments because all that is smashed to pieces. It's completely obsolete. That data is completely obsolete. However, some conferences are exploring the possibility of setting their own league-wide revenue sharing cap that is lower than the 17 to 22 million figure. Some conferences. What conferences? You see, Is this a possibility? It remains murky. It is going to be highly, just take a look at the ACC. The majority of the ACC members, where are they going to want to put that cap at in the ACC? Are they going to put it at 17 to 22 million? Or are they going to put it at 8 million, 10 million? And what does Florida State and Clemson say about that? Back to the article, but it's a stark reminder of the existing budgetary gap between the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC and the Big 10, whose future television contracts and college football playoff distribution will further grow that financial chasm. Should the Big 12 and the ACC have a lower revenue share cap than the richer SEC and the Big 10? It's a question some are asking. This is going to get volatile. The decisions inside these conferences, holy smokes. This is just the start of the 40 days, guys. In 40 days, this is either a go or no go for launch. And if it's a no-go for launch, that creates a whole nother massive storyline. How they're gonna be paying out more in the settlement for House versus NCAA. Again, some schools. This is the PATC money shot of this article. The PATC money shot of this article. Some schools, even those in the power leagues, may not have the resources to even afford half of the revenue share cap. They might not be able to do 10 million or 9 million or 8 million. And we're talking about schools in the power conferences. In a hotly competitive industry where talent acquisition is rooted in recruiting, offering a limited amount of funds could further grow gaps not only between the four conferences, but within them. Some schools, and here's the money shot, some schools may say, I'm out, said one industry source. Now, I'm not quite sure what they mean by saying I'm out. I don't think anyone's leaving any of these power conferences. I don't think that's what it means. But I think it might mean we're not going to go all the way to the limit. We're not going to go all the way to the top of the salary cap. But there is new money coming in. The CFP recently completed an ESPN television extension that pays $1.3 billion annually to the conferences, a combined 58% of which is earmarked for the SEC and the Big Ten, which is $20 to $23 million per school annually. The ACC and the Big 12 receive about 15 to 17%. There are other options too, such as reducing coaching and administrative salaries. Salaries and buyouts are responsible for nearly 40% of the athletic department budgets in FBS, according to data from the Knight Commission. Another 20% of the budgets is related to facility construction, renovation, and debt. Look, coaches, I think we can all come to this agreement. Coaches are going to get fired a lot less. I mean, the buyouts, these schools are not, I don't care what school you're talking about. These buyouts are ridiculous. You're going to hang on to your coaches a lot longer within their contract, right? You're going to be hanging on to your head coach. Already schools are gearing up to slice salaries. Within the contract of Missouri's new athletic director, there will feature a forced majeure provision related to potential changes in college sports financial model, according to the Columbia Tribune. Model changes could trigger a renegotiation of his deal, according to the outlet. His salary, the new athletic director, might be sliced. Such a concept goes beyond the contract of athletic directors. At one SEC school, administrators at least attempted to include a similar clause within the contracts of new coaching hires. The clause triggers a salary reduction if athletic revenue sharing is adopted, according to two people with knowledge of the clause. As one administrator quipped, you can always find the money. When does it start? If a settlement is reached, it's not a guarantee. The revenue sharing model will begin no sooner than the fall of 2025. It could be delayed until 2026. The timing of the settlement hinges somewhat on another antitrust case. The case seeks billions for dollars of college athletics and compensation from television broadcasts. While the House settlement is expected to consolidate two other antitrust cases, Hubbard and Carter, the Fontenot case is an outlier. House and Hubbard and Carter share the same legal team. We'll skip over that. A hearing is set for later this month. What is certainty, college athletics is on the clock in a more serious way than it's ever been. Wow. Wow, that is a lot to take in. Thank you for the super chat, Jacob Brockcat. I appreciate your generosity. Thank you for joining us on this emergency live episode. That is a lot to take in. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you for the super chat, Jacob Brockcat. We will expanded roster sizes alleviate a bloated athlete pool flattened on COVID year and transfer portal players like punching a cow to release gas. I don't know. That's my answer. I do not know. Now, the COVID year, that's almost all. We've almost cycled through all that. And I have heard in other reporting today, and I believe yesterday, that there is a belief that in this new compensation to the student athletes, that there's going to be some requirement from that student athlete, from the football player, for an example, to play in the bowl games, to play in the playoff games, right? To make all that money, to make that probably balloon payment at the end of the year. There's going to be responsibility. There's going to be some. They're not going to be employees, but it sounds like what these athletic departments are going to try to do is they're going to try to buy these student athletes NIL rights. So a player signs on to an NIL deal, the university is going to own their NIL, their name, image, and likeness. And then I don't know what happens. We've had this great question before, where what if that player wants to go in the transfer portal? Does the school that have their name, image, and likeness that owns it, do they sell it to whatever school is about to get that player? Are we going to get into that? I don't know. But thank you for that generosity. Thank you for those super chats. I do appreciate it. Now let's open up the phone lines. This is this is probably going to happen, right? There is some flexibility in this. You don't have to pay up to the cap. You don't have to do all this, but and when you the phone line is now open, 763-260-1333.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, the floor is yours. I do apologize to you earlier today, BJ. I'm very sorry about that. We had that breaking news. The floor is yours. Thank you for calling us once again.
It's all good, Greg. So, quickly, I'm not really surprised by the news. I think if anybody follows college football, you could see this coming a mile away. I think that it is the reason why the Big Ten and the SEC push for a distribution increase. I think they knew we were coming to this position, and to get any kind of bill or any kind of major legislation created, it takes months to kind of get that thing, built and written. So I think it's been in the works. But as for how it affects the lower two conferences, the Big 12 and the ACC, I think, you can fool yourself to think that you can compete, but when your competitors in the Power 2 are getting $50-60 million more per year, I think it'll strain the local donors, right?
Yeah,
the only way you can kind of compete.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's why, just one example, we had an exclusive here at Peek Around the Corner about the North Carolina money perch galvanizing. Now I think hopefully people can see why they would be doing this, right? Because, anyways, go on, BJ. I think it's pretty obvious now, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's like it is stressful to try to compete with somebody who's doubling your salary, for one. For two, it also makes sense why, in my opinion, Brett Yormark has been pushing this basketball expansion, because they rely heavily on their basketball performances, more so than other conferences, I think. And if the reduction in payouts is a thing, it's going to hurt their conference a little bit more than other conferences, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe the ACC, but now it makes sense, because before I was thinking, why would anybody try to increase the tournament? The tournament is perfect. But if you're going to see a reduction in payment, it makes sense now, right? And lastly is how quickly do you think this is going to be rolled out or enacted? Because I think the longer you drag it out, just the worse it's going to be. And if this is indeed rolled out by 2025, shouldn't that give Clemson and Florida State more ammunition in their arsenal to change conferences?
According to Ross Dellenger, it seems like the chalk would be 2026, but it depends on the timing of this. Depends on another lawsuit that's out there that's not folded into this one, but could happen 2025 or 2026. In regards to the timing of the settlement, within the next 40 days, in Pete Thamel's article that came out tonight, and I'm not going to go through that because I want to be able to. We're going to have these phone lines open because I know a lot of people want to say things.
Yeah.
But in that article, in that reporting of ESPN, Pete Thamel, basically sources were saying, look, the longer they wait on the settlement, the more and more they're going to have to pay. So they're going to get in. If they can get in now, it's going to be what, 2.7 billion, 2.9 billion on the back pay. And they need some sort of structure, revenue sharing structure in the settlement to make this all happen with House versus NCAA and a couple other, the Carter and the Hubble ones, those lawsuits that are folded into this. So it has to happen quick. It has to have some sort of revenue sharing component tied to the back pay settlement. All this has to be included. And so I shouldn't be saying this, but they basically almost have to do it at this point. They'll probably get the votes. As long as it's flexible, schools being able to not pay for, the whole thing, whatever. But go ahead, BJ.
Yeah, so what I was thinking is like if you have to do it quickly, right? Because time and lawsuits, you end up paying more, and and as it pertains to the middle two, I'm more concerned about the middle two conferences. It's going to be hard to compete, especially if it's enacted by 2026. That 2028 look-in may be detrimental than beneficial for the middle two. Right, because if you, I'm going to get off your line. Thank you for accepting my call.
You got it.
And you guys have a blessed day.
I appreciate it. Thank you for calling again, sir. Thank you so very much. It's possible. It's possible. I don't know how possible it is, but I guess it's possible that not every program in the SEC and the Big Ten are going to go full bore with adding all these possible scholarships and everything, right?
Call from
Crab Cakes and Football.
Mr. Terrapin, Crab Cakes and Football, the floor is yours. What are your thoughts on this massive breaking news? Thursday, May 2nd.
Probably should have saw it coming a little bit. With some of these state schools that are smaller, can they rely on their states to pay the bill, and then they just give them back a little bit of money at a time as they can afford it? That way, because I'm thinking like the Boston College in Massachusetts and all these other smaller schools that are state schools. Private schools, they might have an issue, a big issue, unless they have a lot of money like Stanford. But besides Stanford, I really can't think of too many in Notre Dame. Those are the only two I can really think of that are private and independent or both or whatever and can really afford it on their own. But I think they're going to have to rely on their states to pay it, and then for them to pay the state back. That way they can still maintain a budget to run their collegiate levels.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, first of all, some of this $30 million is payment that's not coming to them anymore. For example, these athletic departments are not going to receive all this NCAA men's basketball money, okay? They're just not.
Okay.
A couple of million is going to be... So, and then, this salary cap is going to be paid, this revenue sharing is going to be paid each and every single year. So I don't know, like if the state gets involved, what are they going to do, right? I don't think the states are going to get involved. I think schools are going to get quite innovative in trying to come up with 10 million, 15 million, 20 million for the salary cap. They're probably going to have to, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it, but it's going to be impactful, right? You're going to have salary, you're going to have coaches make less money, fine. Administrators make less money, fine. Your ticket sales might go up a little bit. I don't know if that's going to work. especially in this day and age, inflation and everything. Do you have a fundraiser? Do you have a salary cap fundraiser at the, boosters chipping in, triple dipping into their pockets? I don't know.
I mean, you got schools like Oregon, Phil Knight himself would just write the check and clear them day one. Okay, here, you no longer have this debt. So someone like a Phil Knight in Oregon, no big deal. They would just turn around and write the check, clear them of that debt, and probably just say, here you go, another gift from me and Nike. But when I look at some like Pittsburgh and just to name, you said Iowa State earlier, and maybe a Houston or all UCF and all these others now Power 5 schools that weren't Power 5 before or whatever, they don't have the budget for this, and it's going to take a while to get the budget for this.
Yeah.
So, and if they start trimming down on coaches' salaries, I forget the name of the coach that UCF has now. His name
Gus
is
Malzahn?
Yes, Malzahn. I mean, he used to be at Auburn making a lot more money, and if they start trimming his salary now at UCF, that's all it's going to take is another school to say, hey, Malzahn, you want to come over here? We'll pay you a little bit more, because they can afford it, and now you're really going to get some of these schools behind. Mm-hmm. So they really need to come but I think the positive, and I've named all the negatives that I can think of, and I know there's a lot more negatives, but I'm not a negative person. I like to think positive. So some of the positive things that come out of this is when they do the revenue sharing, I think it's going to trim down the transfer portal. I think it's going to lock players into contracts with their school, and that way it's going to take an arm and a leg for someone to leave the state to go to another school or just whatever. Because
that very well could be part of this. Yes.
I'm thinking that's probably going to happen because, I'll use a Maryland example. We lost Chop Robinson to Penn State.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Okay, he now just went, first round this year in the draft.
Yeah.
Well, if you fast forward to the revenue sharing, and we lock him down on some kind of contract and we don't release him from the contract to go to Penn State, and he's making all this money revenue sharing with Maryland, I don't think he gets out of the contract unless he gets special permission from the school to get out of the contract. And that's the only way that he gets out. So that's probably a positive. That's probably going to help the transfer portal situation. But when you get to like the Miamis of the world and all these private schools, what are they going to do? Because they're not getting state funding, or at least I don't think they're getting state funding. And their boosters are, okay, they might be millionaires now, but after they give their millions away, they're no longer millionaires. So this is a starting point, but I think there's going to have to be some heavy consideration for some of these schools that are just, because the ACC is about to get gutted. The Big 12, as like you said earlier, TCU I think is the only one that's, or not you, but someone else said earlier, is the only one that's participated in a college football playoff outside of Oklahoma and Texas in the last how long? So they only got one team that's represented. So all this money's not flowing into the Big 12. So and the ACC is getting ready to lose Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and possibly Miami, and who knows who else. They'll still have money coming in, but it's not going to be they can't afford to lose $30 million a year for 10 years. They might be able to lose $5 million a year for whatever the math is on it, or something like that.
And, there's always been disparity, right, among schools.
Right.
There's NIL disparity right now. There's been funding for facilities disparity. There's been funding for coaching staff salaries disparity. The problem is now that the money's going to the student athletes, this money gap is going to be more impactful than ever. So that is why, over the last couple of years on X, formerly known as Twitter, there has been some ACC guys who keep writing saying the ACC has won all these championships without having the money and I keep saying, but when players start getting compensated directly from the schools, then the money gap is really going to have a major effect. And now we are at that point. And I think this is the biggest reason of all the reasons that Florida State and Clemson went to the courts. It's the reason why USC called the Big Ten. This is the reason. I know this for 100% sure because this is the first conversation I had on March 30. March 31st. It was actually March 31st, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. The first conversation I had, I was told USC called the Big Ten. These are the reasons why. And the number one reason, they had to get above the revenue stratification line because in the next few years, they're going to be paying their student athletes direct compensation from the schools. And another thing that I think will come out of all this is bad coaches will no longer get buyouts. I hope that happens. Yeah.
Because coaching is the only one where you can have a losing record or be really bad at your job and they're going to pay you millions of dollars just not to come back to coach the school anymore. I would love that as a truck driver personally. But, hopefully they end the buyouts. I mean, if you're bad, you're fired just like any other job and no more buyouts. I hope that's going to be another thing that comes down. So that should be a good thing. So,
all righty, sir. We got more people trying to call in.
Have a good night.
I appreciate crab cakes and football. Great call. Chris Hughes. Thank you for your super chat. Thank you for your generosity to our channel. Once again, Mr. Hughes, certain sports at schools will be eliminated, much like when Title IX was implemented. Wrestling programs were cut in SEC. An example, the University of Tennessee. Hold on.
Call from
Tristan Fives.
Tristan, can you hold on 1 second?
Yes.
I do appreciate it. You're absolutely correct, Chris. I don't know how sports cannot be eliminated. Even with some of these more wealthier athletic programs, but definitely the ones that are not swimming with money. Because again, I don't know how much autonomy these athletic programs are going to, their decision making and how they distribute this money. We don't know how much Title IX will play into it. I just don't know. We don't know. But if the money has to be distributed equally to your athletes, I mean, my goodness, sports are going to be cut because these athletic departments are going to want more money to be distributed to their athletes that are on revenue-producing sponsored teams, sports, which only makes logical sense. But if the money is just distributed among your athletic teams, not equally, you have the decisions, you make. Again, some sports are going to be cut. I fully agree with you, Chris Hughes. Thank you so much for the super chat. Tristan, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, listen, I didn't catch the very beginning of your show, but I think I'm familiar with the story. I want to double check this one point. This is the Big Ten and the SEC are leading the charge on this, right? They're both in agreement on this?
I don't know how to, I'm not, all the power conferences, all the commissioners and Charlie Baker were together with the House lawyers, right? They were all in the room hashing this out. So they've all been
Okay.
talking. So I don't know who's leading what, but they're all in this though. They are all involved.
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
there's difference in support. In the article, it said that the Big Ten was most aligned in support of doing the settlement. There's probably disagreements among inside each conference, each presidents and chancellors and athletic departments. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds to me this is complex. It's hard to know. I mean, we all see kind of the big picture, but it's hard to know the very specifics about where this is going to lead. It sounds like they're trying to accomplish. I'm thinking about this from a SEC and Big Ten perspective. I think they're trying to accomplish three things all at once, and I'm just going to say this and give me your commentary or tell me if you disagree.
Yep.
The first thing I think they're trying to do is come up with a system that will not be torn down by future Supreme Court decisions.
Yep.
That's the first thing I think they're trying to do. They want a system. They want to stabilize it now and not have it changed through the Supreme Court.
I think they're trying to get Congress involved by doing this, so Congress will come in and get some codification involved in this. Give a special carve out when it comes to student athletes not being able to become employees of the universities. But go on, Tristan.
Okay, and then I think the second thing, and I think you were touching on this when you were talking about the stratification. I think that this is going to probably, from the Big Ten and SEC perspective, they want this. I think it's going to accelerate the process of getting consolidation of the final, round of movement of ACC universities into the Big Ten and SEC.
Yeah.
This is going to light a fire to get it done quicker, in my opinion.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then I think the third thing that they probably are hoping to accomplish in this is I think they don't want collective bargaining to come into the equation. I think they want to avoid having player unions.
Yep. Greg Sankey is the one that's hugely against that. Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I don't know if this is going to work on all those. I think the one thing that it'll probably work well is getting the ACC schools to move quicker. I don't know if the other things are going to work out. I still think the Supreme Court's going to have a say in how all this turns out, and I still think you're going to see collective bargaining come into the equation here. I don't think that can be avoided.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
I got to tell you, I agree with you. I wish I didn't. It would make more interesting program, but I agree with you. The CBA part, I don't know how this ends the employment. Again, I think this is a somewhat of a big gamble in the sense of I think they're trying to lure Congress. If they make this deal, if they make this settlement, I think they believe that they can go back up to Congress and say, see, we're serious. These student athletes are making a whole lot more money, but now we need a carve out. We need protection.
Right.
I don't know if they're going to get it.
Yeah. Well, one thing also, Greg, this is something to think about. I agree with your question. You're not sure that they're going to get it from Congress.
Yeah.
An alternative, and this is admittedly very messy, okay, is it could just simply happen at the state level. We've already seen certain states take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and start implementing their own laws for governing how the student-athlete situation is handled, okay? And if Congress never takes up this cause and, comes forward with some legislation, the alternative that might be forced onto the situation might be that each individual state's going to have to ratify some set of laws that makes this possible, and then it's just handled at the state level. Now, I don't know that that's optimal at all, but it seems like you're going to have to do one or the other. Because we're talking about, especially in the Big Ten and SEC, we're talking about a lot of very large state universities with large sums of money being spent and generated, and they simply are not going to let an organization, and I know they're being phased out, but they're simply not going to let an organization like the NCAA impose penalties that cause the state institution financial harm, right? So
Yeah.
it has to be state laws protecting these institutions, and then whatever's enforced has to be agreed upon or permitted by the state. And I think, as messy and awful as that sounds, if Congress doesn't take this up, that's your only other choice.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already seen some states start to do that. Virginia did it recently.
Yeah.
Missouri made a law about the NCAA can't enforce penalties unless it violates state law.
Yep.
So we're starting to see that happen at the state level. And if it goes in that direction, Greg, then I think you might also see, the conferences themselves might somehow need to become the regulating force behind this. And so you might actually see conferences go in a direction of, attracting similar institutions so that the laws that are carved out or the rules that are carved out in that conference are tailored towards the members. And it strikes me that the ACC, I'm thinking about their recent moves, they've had a large number of private universities, and they've got even more now, right? So the expansion brought in Stanford and SMU. Those are privates. And I'm just wondering if maybe the ACC survives and it evolves into a conference of private universities, and then there's going to be a set of rules that are appropriate for private universities to help them to flourish.
That is what Immaculate PATC member has been talking about for months. That's what he believes the ACC is going to turn into.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's got some good insight into that. So, so I just wanted to throw in my worthless 2 cents.
Oh, it's definitely not worthless. I appreciate it, Tristan. I agree with you. What the system, not trying to have the system be torn down, is one of their motives. The stratification, Big Ten and the SEC, yes. In number 3, not to have the collective bargaining agreement. I agree with all those things. Those are all part of the motivation of why this is happening.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you take care, Greg, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Great call once again by Tristan. Curtis.
Call from
ABO prep course.
Soap, can you hold on for just a moment, please?
Absolutely.
I do appreciate it. Just got to get caught up here. Curtis, thank you so much, my friend, a longtime friend of the program, of myself. Thank you for becoming a new member of Early Peak, Cloak and Dagger Early Peak. For those who do not know, if you become a member of this College Football Rebel Outpost channel, you become a member. There are member-only episodes that provide a little bit of Cloak and Dagger information before we talk about it live. Thank you. And if you want to become a member, go to the link provided in the description box. Hit the link, hit the join button, and become a member. Become a member. Cloak and Dagger Early Peak.
Hello?
And Curtis, thank you so much for becoming an Early Peak member. I thank you so very much. You are hereby knighted Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so much for your generosity. And Chris Hughes, thank you for your super chat. Do you think Justice Kavanaugh ever thought his and other justice decision would alter college sports to this magnitude? I believe he probably did. That Alston case versus the NCAA, Justin Kavanaugh basically kind of told the NCAA, you got to change. You've got to change. This has got to change for the student athletes. They've got to be treated like students in regards to NIL. No limit, no cap. I don't know if this salary cap's going to work, though. I don't know if that's going to work, if that ever gets in front of Justice Kavanaugh. Thank you for the super chat, Chris Hughes. Thank you once again for your generosity. Go ahead, caller. The floor is yours.
Hey, Greg, it's Soap here. Let me ask you, would you mind if I pivoted quickly to the South Carolina case?
You sure can. Absolutely. The floor is yours. Whatever you want to talk about.
Well, I was lucky enough to be able to follow along today. I was getting ready to call and talk to you about this, and then this hit, and it just confirmed pretty much what I was going to call about. And what it is I believe that the South Carolina case is the case that is much more important to the long-term existence of the ACC, more so than the Florida case. I think that the Florida lawyers screwed up when they presented their case and they wrote it improperly. I'm not sure really what happened there, but the judge had to tell them to go rewrite.
Yep. They have to redo their amended complaint. Yep. Go ahead.
So that puts them behind the cue ball as far as time goes. So I think that the South Carolina case is really the Rose Bowl. And what I'd like to do is make my point, and then I'd like for you to comment on it and tell me what you think about it, because you and I have spoken about this before, and you've told me that you haven't heard anything along these lines. So I'm very interested to get your input on it. But first of all, we know that Florida State and Clemson, if they had the choice, would choose right now to leave the ACC with their grant of rights intact and not pay anything. Agreed?
Well, sure. I think they're willing to pay some of the exit fee, but go ahead. Yep.
The grant of rights are assigned to the ACC, not to ESPN. The ACC is who they assign their rights to. Yeah. Clemson, all right. So in the South Carolina case, Clemson has made it very clear that what they're suing them over is the rights, the grant of rights being retained by each individual school in the event that the school leaves the conference.
Yes,
they believe very clear.
They believe the grant of rights is limited in scope because of what it says in the ESPN ACC media agreement. Therefore, Clemson believes if they leave the conference, they bring the day they leave the conference, not the day they officially notify, but then July 1st of the following year, when Clemson leaves, they own their own media rights to be able to give to their next future conference. You are correct. Go ahead, sir.
So if you're not in the ACC, there are no grant of rights.
According to Clemson's reading of the grant of rights tied with the ESPN ACC media agreements, correct?
So here's the prism that I'd like for you to view this through. Imagine or look at it as the Magnificent Seven, saying that the grant of, that they get some type, any type of decision by the South Carolina court that says that it can be the aspect of a false statement or slander, any type of statement that says that the grant of rights goes with the school when they leave. Because that's what they're trying to do. If they can do that before the end of June, before June 31st, the time that SMU, Stanford, and Cal come into the league, and they can get 8 schools to vote, they can dissolve the ACC, and all of those schools would then be free to go wherever they want with their grant of rights intact, with paying absolutely no fees to the ACC. Now, if you read the document that you had on this afternoon, the amended complaint from South Carolina, there are, I'll just mention these, but Section 7 specifically states that they are asking the court for a statement of a restraining order and in reference to slander. And that's specific to the fact that the grant of rights go with the school.
Yes. Yep.
They talk about in Section 54 revenue sharing, where if the schools were that they are unable to negotiate revenue sharing among the other ACC schools. So if those ACC schools who voted the Magnificent Seven were to come together, start their own organization or co-op, where they, for a 3-year period or 2-year period, combined all of the funds that they get from whatever new conference they're in for television, and then they split it evenly so that nobody's making more money or nobody's making less money. Everybody's making the same amount of money for the first 2 or 3 years after the ACC resolves. That's why they have to be able to negotiate with the other schools. 150 talks specifically about the
Good
false
point.
statement.
Very good point. Go ahead. Yeah.
That is a false statement, Section 150. And then the prayer, number one, the prayer specifically states that they're asking the South Carolina court to state that the grant of rights goes with the school when they leave the ACC. If there is no ACC, there's no grant of rights. Period. So now you've told me many times, Greg, that you haven't heard anything about this, that you don't think it's going to happen. I respect your opinion as the leader of the people that I've listened to on this topic. So I'm either missing something or the offense is not letting the defense know what's going on, and they're doing a pretty good job of hiding this, because it just, I try to make, I'm kind of a futurist based upon common sense. This just makes too much sense. If they vote to dissolve the ACC and they get a statement from the court, any statement that says that the grant of rights goes with them, then that becomes the driving course for all other states. It supersedes all other states because they got that statement first, but they have to do it before the end of June when those 3 other schools come in, because they'll put the kibosh on it.
Yeah.
So there it is. What do you think?
Let me take I'll answer it. Let me get the next phone call in, and I'm going to answer your question.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Is that okay? I appreciate it. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Great call. Fantastic call. Great job by Soap. Great call. I'm going to answer it. And then I'm going to get to some very kind super chats and a very kind gift membership. Okay, here's the deal. I don't think it's going to happen before June, but I don't think that was the main point of the question. Once the judgment comes, once the judgment comes.
Call from
Numbskull News.
Numbskull News is on the line. Numbskull News, can you give me a moment, please?
Oh, I suppose I could.
I appreciate your patience. The thing is, if this thing happened, if there was a declaratory judgment made by a Pickens County judge, I can't remember the name. I think the name is Gravely or something. Judge Gravely. That says, yes, Clemson, if they leave, they keep their rights with them. Then there is no reason to dissolve the conference. I mean, that's just one of the reasons. But the main reason why the dissolution theory never really worked is because 8 schools simply saying, we're gone, we're out the door. Oh, the conference dissolves. Oh, by the way, the gore doesn't dissolve. It doesn't exist anymore. It's because the ACC would appeal, get in the courts. Again, you got to win this in the courts or with a settlement to make sure you get your rights back for any of this to work. It's too rainbow and bunny rabbits and unicorns that are going on. You gotta win this in the court, get a judgment before you leave, because you're not worth anything if you leave without your media rights, or gain a settlement so you can gain back your media rights. So dissolving the conference becomes kind of a moot point if Clemson gets that declaratory judgment, and I don't think that's going to happen before June. Before we get the numbskull news, Joe Z, thank you so much for your early P Cloak and Dagger membership once again for the 5th month. Holy smokes. You are hereby Cloak and Knighted once again. Thank you so very much, Joe Z. The question, or the statement question, why is Sankey so worried of players becoming employees? He'd be okay with an independent contractor designation rather than a full-blown employees. He's against it. I don't know why. Look, Sankey doesn't talk about this. Tony Petitti doesn't talk about this. Tony Petitti doesn't talk about anything. The only time we hear Tony Petitti's voice, we don't hear his voice. That's the problem. He keeps telling Ross Dellenger what he's thinking. These guys never talk about their vision. I guess that's how power players do it, but I get so cranked up with Sankey and Petitti. I know everybody in the chat room loves them if you're an SEC Big Ten guy, but I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Good question, Zoe. Good question, Mr. Joe Z, but Sankey really never opines on why he's against all that. Crab Cakes in Football. Thank you once again for another gift membership. You are hereby Knighted Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so very much. Ryan Willie with a gifted membership. I know that was given to Jamie Thornton. Ryan Willie, you are the kindest evil badger I've ever seen. You are the nicest evil badger there is. Badger fan Ryan Willie, thank you so much for your gifted membership. You are hereby Cloak and Dagger Knighted, and so are you, Jamie Thornton. Thank you so very much. I do not know. Kerry Go knows. Didn't see the notification, Greg. Always a great show. Thank you for your super chat, Kerry, for your continued generosity to the show over and over and over again. And I'm not sure who, Chad Bracey. Congratulations. Chad Bracey, you have been gifted a membership from Crab Cakes and Football. Please say thank you to Mr. Terrapin. Chad Bracey, you are hereby Cloak and Dagger Knighted. Thank you so much for your patience, Numbskull News. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. It's going to be something to the effect of unintended consequences about all this massive change. But go ahead, sir. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Oh, there'll be plenty. But first, Ross Dellenger is really a pain in my butt. I'm getting tired of Ross Dellenger. If you can't report something nice, don't report it at all, punk. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Got it.
I'm a little tired of Mr. Man there.
Yeah.
And as far as unintended consequences, yeah, because then you got to deal with Title IX, which I hate anyway. I love women, but I hate Title IX. And that's going to be another thorn in the whole backside there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if you make the football players like employees, maybe you can avoid Title IX with them because they shouldn't count because they're paying for everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it was just kind of hard to get past the Ross Dellenger thing. I need one of those, those clowns you punch that come back up every time. I need one with Ross Dellenger's little face on it. That's all I'm saying.
Got
it. But $30 million. Now, is that going to be the same across the entire Power Four? Because we know two conferences make a whole lot more money than everybody else.
Well, it's that is up to $30 million. It's going to cost when you throw in all the factors of the salary cap is going to be about between 17 to 22 million. But then you're going to have other extra costs. If you choose to, you can pay the extra scholarships to the expanded roster limits for all the sports across the board. So if you do everything, if you want to pay money for everything, and there might be only a few schools that do that, because some schools don't, roster limit on, I don't know, gymnastics. Maybe some schools, we don't, whatever. But the rules apply for all the schools in the power conferences. The biggest part of that is the salary cap of between 17 and 22 million. There's a cap. You can go all the way to the top of it for direct payments from the university to the student athletes, but it's the same for all the power conferences schools.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so is everybody having to pay this lawsuit equally? That part I didn't really understand. Ross talks a lot, or he prints a lot. So that part was hard for me to follow. Like, is Alabama and TCU paying the same amount towards the lawsuit?
Yeah.
And because to me, that's a big problem.
I don't know. And that is shame on me for not bringing that question up earlier, because it was not spelled out in the Ross Dellenger article, but it also wasn't spelled out in the Pete Thamel article of tonight, because I've got it right here in front of me. I've been reading it through it. That's one of those unknown things. And Alabama would have had way more NIL. They have stopped because of their actions, just like every other action in the other institution for the last decades. They have stopped NIL direct payment going to the student athletes, and their tally should be higher than the other schools, right?
Yeah.
Great
and
question.
See, here's my big problem with this whole thing. As far as paying the student athletes and all that, you have to think over the years, who's telling the NCAA what to do? Mm-hmm. It's the big schools. That's who's telling them what to do. It's the Alabamas, it's Texas, it's USC, it's Notre Dame. Those are the schools telling the NCAA that, hey, we don't want to pay these student athletes. Oklahoma State, TCU, Vanderbilt, they have no say in any of it. That's what ticks me off. So all these big schools want to come together in two conferences. Okay, cool. You want to make more money than everybody. Okay, cool. Now the consequences need to fall on them heavily, not everybody else who had no say in anything.
Great point.
Because out of the Big 12, I've been a Big 12 fan for a long time, mostly a TCU fan, which means I came to Big 12 a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But I know very well Baylor and Texas Tech had zero say in anything. Hell, Texas Tech still doesn't get the oil money, like, even though that's where all the oil is, they don't get the oil money like A&M and like Texas does. So to me, those big schools, you want to be the big blue bloods, fine. Get the big check handed to you, and you pay that sucker, because you're the ones making all the decisions for everybody. So here you go.
That's a great comment.
That's the way I feel about it. The smaller schools, I mean, should they pay something? Yeah, they should pay something, but not on the same scale. That's ridiculous.
That's a great question, and I think that question has to be answered.
And if I'm the Big 12 and ACC, I got a big problem if everyone's going to be equal now when we weren't equal when talking about the CFP. So that's the way I see it. This thing needs to swing both ways. If you're going to be the big dog, then you got to pay the big check.
Yeah. I had the it seemed to me, and maybe I was reading into it wrong, but reports of like a couple weeks ago when they were first talking about all this paying out the House versus NCAA, it seemed like the power conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC were going to have to pay more. Didn't you feel that? I thought that was written somewhere in some report. But it definitely
I'm not
is not
sure. I
part of
assume it.
Huh?
I assume it, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
Because that's where the money is.
I know I read that somewhere, but
Yeah.
but I did not read it today. So
That's just what I'm wary of.
Yeah.
Are these two big conferences now
yeah,
trying to advocate some of their responsibility to the other conferences? Because, that's the whole deal with trying to get this thing worked out. Because if that's the case, I'd rather just go to court. Let's go. If it goes to $6 billion, fine. Because it ain't going to be the Big 12 paying it. I don't give a damn.
burn the whole thing down. Yeah,
Hey, the Joker was right about a few things, sir.
yeah,
Joker was right about a few things.
yeah, yeah.
Just watch the whole world burn.
Yeah.
Anyway. Anyway, great show, Greg. I love it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh my God!
Mr. Numbskull News, thank you so very kindly. It's always
No
great
problem.
hearing.
You have a good night, sir.
You too, sir. Always great hearing from him. Beautiful.
Call from
Rock and rant.
Rock and Rant, Mr. Hurricane. Can you hold on for a moment, please?
Absolutely.
I do appreciate your patience. Kerry Gold knows UNC is so overrated, everything but basketball. UNC to the Big East. He's laughing about his comment. Thank you so much once again for your incredible generosity to this channel. Kerry Gold knows. Thank you so very much. Ryan Willie, super chat. In my opinion, Olympic sports will be dropped. Some Olympic sports will be dropped, not all of them. I always think about Stanford in this situation. They've got all those sports, and those Olympic sports have been competing at an incredibly high level. They're going to the ACC. Their Olympic sport teams are traveling. Now Stanford's going to be, they're going to have some, I don't know, what is Stanford going to do? What decisions are they going to make on this? What is California, Berkeley? Are they even going to have a salary cap? They have all this money, but their athletic department, California, Berkeley's in debt for $30 million a year each year. They're in debt. The stories on this are endless when this happens. Are endless. I'm going to be in the studio constantly. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. It's unbelievable. Mr. Hurricane, thank you so much for your super chat. Everybody, I appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, more than ever, if you're new to the channel, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel. Subscribe, open up your notifications, and smash that like button. If you've liked our content tonight, Mr. Hurricane, Rock and Rant, I thank you for your generosity over the months. I thank you for the incredible comments. I thank you for your patience. Go ahead, sir. Let it rip.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and I appreciate the time. I don't even know where to start, right? This is like a definition of a day that you could do a Shakespearean soliloquy on all the things. And I did just want to ask you a question on the earlier news, because I'll forget it as we go forward. Did you have a take, because you were reading it live time, on the Clemson amended or updated or non-redacted to, whatever we're calling what we saw today, that even though FSU has come super strong, what was your take today? I kind of felt that they just bought the flamethrower because they know. Not like they think that they know what's in the contract, but that they know that they have the out, and they were just going for it, even though everyone said that they were being sort of nice to ESPN originally. It seemed to me like they just know that they're out, and there's not a doubt in their mind. What was your take from what you read, and combining with all the history?
Yeah, I agree. Clemson believes that in fact, in their initial complaint when they filed it in March 25th or March 19th, whatever day that was, they said it's in plain language. The grant of rights is limited in scope because of what it says in the ESPN ACC agreement. That is their argument. That is not mine. That's their argument. Because usually you guys, every time I do a live show, I get comments later on, people saying, Greg, the ESPN ACC agreement doesn't have anything to do with the Gore. Look, these lawyers are arguing their case. I think it has some merit, but I'm not a lawyer, so just relax, calm down. But in Clemson's attitude, tone in this amended complaint, completely different than their first one. I agree. They came in hard today, and I think they're pretty confident. And I also think Clemson believes that they're going to shuttle through this South Carolina case faster than what's going to happen in Mecklenburg. I think they've got a little bit of a head start. But go ahead, Rock and Rant. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think this actually validates them staggering, even though you had to take a proverbial L earlier, right? Because now they got to see, what happened with the Florida State case, and then you got to see this potential delay in Leon County with the mediation, and when that's all going to get done, let alone what's going on in North Carolina, and they're able, just like Florida State's being able to update their Leon County case after the judge gave him that window where he dismissed it, but not with inability to come back. Clemson's able to update what they're doing based on what they've seen. So they're all sort of like horses in a race jockeying, and it seems like they've now taken the lead, even though it seemed initially that they were both last in the race and that their case might go slower based off of how South Carolina laws were going. So anyway, I just thought that was super interesting. And then we have the other bombshells that dropped tonight. I think Numskull just said is great points and questions, and it's not necessarily even just that Alabama should pay more than TCU. It's if these are settlements for athletic departments as a whole, it's also a matter of like how big is your athletic department, not just because you get more money from the Big Ten versus the Big 12, but if you have a lot more athletes that in theory were harmed, were having restrictions, even if their potential markets were a lot lower because of what sport they were in, that also has to, you would think, factor in, or else, all these other schools, these smaller schools from a revenue perspective, or smaller programs within big departments are paying more than their unfair share. It's like they're getting screwed either way they're going. So it'd be really curious to see what else comes out from that. There was somebody who had mentioned earlier about that this is going to be, taking away the buyouts for coaches in a way, and that's not really actually. It might just be a semantics thing, but that's not actually true, right? What it might do is make the contracts be smarter initially.
Yeah.
Because buyouts actually save money for the schools. Instead of paying, we owe you $6 million a year for 4 years, we fire you because we made a bad decision and you sucked at your job. They would owe them $24 million. Buyouts are lesser of that depending upon how many years. So it's not the buyouts that are going to go away. It's over time. They might do less lengthy deals. Maybe they won't, pay. But I don't know that will actually happen either. It'd still be the first time that scale all of a sudden suddenly comes down for the coaches. So I don't know what your take is on, what that really does. It's like one thing to say the coaches will get paid less. It's another thing for the top coaches in reality for that to actually happen no matter what transpires with this agreement.
I think we're going to see some salaries cut. I think we're going to see a different landscape when it comes to coaching contracts. Maybe not for the top brands, but I think negotiations are going to get a little tighter for these coaching staffs, coaches, and even athletic directors. Right. We saw that report, the new Missouri athletic director, there's a clause in his contract that it sounds like his salary is going to get diminished a touch if we go to the revenue model, sharing model. So,
right.
Yeah. It's going to have some effect.
I do think that some sports potentially at certain schools will get cut, but I don't know if it's going to be as dramatic in the certain areas as people might think, right? Where we have to also be aware of the political and landscape that's going on at the moment. It's not like one of these schools that said they might add a ton of scholarships can allocate those all to football and not have their entire campus and alumni network ask why they haven't added more scholarships for for women's sports or added a volleyball team as opposed to adding 15 more scholarships to men's football when transfer portals are also going on and those rosters are changing. So it would be kind of interesting to see how that goes. I'm not as familiar with your world of hockey, but for baseball, adding scholarships would be dramatically impactful for a lot of schools because it's like 11.7.
Yes.
And the private schools has tuition disparities have gone up, and some of those programs, like Miami, even have suffered because players can't afford that discrepancy that they got a half a scholarship. So it's actually empowered a lot of state schools. I don't know if the same thing is going on in those schools with another expensive sport like hockey. If that's the same thing, like how many scholarships they have.
It is. Yep. So
that'll definitely be an interesting thing to ultimately see what plays out in that regard. But the last thing I just want to close, I have no idea why anybody thinks that Congress will settle this at all.
What was that?
They can't settle things. I have no idea why anyone thinks, from Greg Sankey to any caller, that Congress is going to come in after the court rulings that have already gone on and settle this when they can't settle an 80-20 issue in this country generally, like without choosing partisan sides. And the aspect of penalizing the NCAA, sure, they could probably align on that, but that's not really what this is. It's about paying athletes, and whether it's coming from the right where free market will probably be a big thing, or coming from the left that union would be a big thing. The idea that Congress will come in and settle this seems absurd to me. They'll do a performative hearing, they'll do a speech, but they're not going to settle it. And I don't think the state's option that somebody brought up is also viable because we've already seen what's happened on NIL and all the rules are going to be different. So I think the only solution really on that level would be the conference side, right? Because that way you can mitigate where if a conference has teams in 12 different states, that they don't have to worry about their member organizations are playing under 12 different state rules as opposed to the conference is unified, even if then the conferences aren't all unified in how they apply all the different things from the revenue share to scholarships per team. That's probably the only path if, in fact, employment or unionization and collective bargaining is somehow avoided, which I don't know how that's going to happen, but let's just play that theory out. I don't see the states or the feds being the true solution for that. It's either going to be at the conference or it's going to go to collective bargaining.
Got it. Beautiful rock and rant. Beautiful call, Mr. Hurricane.
You will have 20 shows a week for the next 12 months at this rate. So it's for you.
This is going to be impactful, I guess is the correct word. Yes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night, Greg.
You too. Great call by Mr. Hurricane, Rock and Rant, Ryan Thomas. Greg, I truly fear for you when fridges demand NIL. You guys kill me.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, can you hold on for a moment?
Yep.
I do appreciate it. Thank you for your patience. Ryan, I might set up a refrigerator right here. No, right over here. Put a refrigerator, small little refrigerator right here. And anytime I go into my soliloquy, anytime I say I'm not the brightest bulb in the refrigerator, I'm going to open up that door and there's going to be a bulb in there that's not lit up. And then I'm going to have, my zero sugar cherry Coke in there, take it out, whatever. Maybe I'll put a refrigerator, PATC refrigerator, and it better not ask for an NIL deal. I appreciate your super chat so very much, Ryan Thomas. Also, Chris Hughes, thank you once again for your super chat tonight. Capital projects such as stadium renovations and athletic complexes will be curtailed or put on hold indefinitely. Some of them will be. Some of them can't be, but some of them will be. No question about it. Now, obviously, Northwestern's building a new football stadium. University of South Florida's building a new football stadium. But University of Nebraska-Lincoln, they have a big project ready to go for stadium renovations. Is that going to be curtailed somewhat? I do not know. But overall, I believe you are correct, Mr. Hughes. Thank you for your incredible generosity for tonight. Thank you so very much. Immaculate. Mr. Hawkeye is on the line. Massive news. Could be even bigger once we sort all this out in the next 40 days. What do you got to say, good sir?
Well, I hardly ever drink, but I'm drinking tonight, Greg.
Woo! Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's not just for the camera. Earlier you made the shout out and appreciate that. And the idea that I've had is not based upon any of this, although thinking that at some point in time we were going to have some type of presentation like this. I mean, we all knew this was coming. That doesn't help though when it hits you smack in the face. You're still left reeling from it. But I remember something Dellinger did an interview with the head lawyer guy who's in charge of 3 out of the 4 cases.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he said just stuck in my head. Like it's just pinned right in there. And one of the things he said, he made like 4 major points. And the one that stuck with me the most is that conferences are going to be allowed to make their own rules going forward. That's new. Mm-hmm. And stuck with me. And I was like, okay, this means something, and it's kind of what I've been looking at going, okay, yes, because, all these major conferences are becoming different models now, where it used to be there were 5 conferences following the same model in different regions of the country. Now each of them is going to be doing a different model. And I noticed it and I saw it and I was like, I don't know what this means or why they're necessarily doing it, but it's here and they're doing it. You can look at each one of them and they're all different. And I think we might have just got our answer. And, if anyone is dialed in to what's really going on, it's that lawyer. Mm-hmm. 3 of the 4, he knows everything going on. When he said that makes sense now with what we're seeing here, where each of these conferences are going to be able to decide just how much they go all in on this, right? And you guys were talking about, the possible elite private university focused conference. They're going to have a very different situation with this. They're not necessarily going to be able to lean on maybe some state aid or whatever. They're going to have to figure out a different approach towards this. And they're going to need to control the conference in order to have the control of the vote in order to determine what to do.
Yes.
So that this might be really presenting this idea now to where people can go, the light kicks on and go, oh, I get it now. And I think I've been saying, I think the ACC is buying time. This has got to be settled at some point in time. But once it gets settled, now you have to figure stuff out. Now you have to make new arrangements, new deals. You got to start. So I don't know. Maybe they're just buying time for this to all come down here. We'll see. Just trying to make sense of all this. But that's kind of what I'm seeing now is you're going to have different conferences going at this differently. And, yeah, they're going to maybe come together at the end of the season still and have a tournament. But largely, they're going to have to operate differently.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Because I got to be honest, I'm a little confused about, and I think I've answered this differently throughout tonight's show. I think I've just realized it now, so shame on me, but I guess I'm more confused than I thought I was. In regards to, okay, we got the salary cap, right? We're going to have the salary cap. Mm-hmm. Let's just say it's $20 million, okay?
Okay. Yep.
Well, okay, so is that $20 million? Because Numbskull News asked this question. I think somebody else did too. That $20 million is for everybody, right? In at least the Power 4 conferences. But then we got some reporting today from Ross Dellenger kind of indicating, no, the ACC and the Big 12 might settle, or sources are telling him, they might have a lower revenue sharing cap. So is it going to be is this salary cap going to be decided per conference or per school? We've gotten mixed messages, I think. Anyways, go ahead.
No, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
Go
to
ahead.
cut in. I think it's going to be per conference, because within that conference, that's who you're largely competing with.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you play the vast majority of your games against. That's who you're winning conference championships against. So I think that's where it has to be settled. And once again, going back with saying that's what the lawyer who is involved in all of these talks. I mean, he's involved in more talks than Sankey or Petiti is, because he's involved in all of them.
So there would be, so there's a decision of, within the settlement, there's going to be a statement within the settlement that says revenue sharing, this is the cap, this is the ultimate cap. The highest that any conference can decide, it's going to be such and such. Let's say it's 20 million. But then every conference can decide if there's going to be a salary cap lower than 20 million. Is that what we're thinking here? In other words, there's definitely going to be a cap that no one can go above, but there are going to be some conferences that are going to decide, no, we're going to have it lower. And if that's the case, Immaculate, the politics, the drama inside the Big 12 and the ACC in regards to this is going to be something to behold.
Yeah, and Thamel did mention that as well. And he said that there's going to be some varying paths. He didn't go into depth on details like Dellinger did, but he did touch upon that. And the thing that sticks out to me is Dellinger gave us a percentage. There's this 22%, this 21 to 22%. And what I think we might end up seeing is, while some conferences may be able to pay lower than other conferences, I think it's going to be that percentage. That's what they have to at least do. And then if they want to go above that to match, they're like the Big Ten and the SEC are at 22% cap at 20, and they do that. Say the Big 12, they're 22%, maybe down by 17, 16 million.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do. But they then might be able, if they're like, we want to compete with them. We don't want them just, taking our athletes, whatever, Yeah. They might then opt in to go up to the 20 range when they don't have to. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's what I'm thinking. I could be dead wrong. Like, I'm just trying to make sense of this with everyone else.
No, you make sense. You're making sense.
But I'm thinking that percentage that Dellinger said in his reporting, I think that matters more than the number. I think there's going to be a percentage of your overall receipt that you bring in that's going to have to go towards this. And then there's going to be a cap on top of that you then can't go above. And that's probably to get everyone to come work together. So they're looking at Big Ten, SEC saying, we just don't want you to run away with this. Like, that's to me, and also they want to set that so they don't want to get forced to having to raise pay. Like, they want to know what they're budgeting for the next 10 years. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying to people. Like, look, the budgeters, the people, the bean counters, they're going to rule the day on this. And they don't care about, well, how good we do in this tournament is going to determine how much money we make. They hate that shit. Sorry for language, but they hate it.
Yeah.
Like, you're a budgeter. You want to know how much you're going to be making. So they want set amounts. They don't want this, you get a certain amount for however far you go in the tournament. That's hard to budget on. So, yeah, I think that's the case, is that they just want to know where it's going to be for a certain amount of time, and then based upon that. I don't know how much more of that you want to go through. I know some of the guys were asking questions in chat about the North Carolina BOG stuff. And just wanted to say real quick, it was Opie and Jamie who were asking about it. You probably remember, I think you might have talked about it already today, but the BOG determined that North Carolina, that all of their system schools are going to have to play each other a certain amount of times within 6-year periods.
That was actually a bill filed in the North Carolina State Legislature. It wasn't a Board of Governor initiative. But it is, I discussed it on the live show earlier today, where in a 6-year cycle, they're all going to have to play each other at least once. It's just more hands in the pot, more cooks in the kitchen, just more governmental decisions, taking decisions away from North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and North Carolina State. And, it's just, I don't know, man.
Yeah. To me, that affects Duke and Wake Forest the most, because say these schools leave North Carolina State, games that they might have scheduled against Duke and Wake Forest as out of conference games.
Yep.
It's almost like the state said, "Screw you, private." Like, we're worrying about the bottom line of our state schools, and that's just one more nail in the coffin. I'm saying, like, these elite privates, they got to band together and figure out, how are we going to survive this? I mean, you've got class action lawsuits against them because they're price fixing. Well, they're not doing, some of that's greed, but some of it's like survival instinct, right? Like, they're banding together. Yeah. So I think that with this starting to come out the way it is now with day-to-day announcements, this is moving quickly. So I don't know much else to say about it on that. I know you got people who are going to want to be calling in, but anything else touch upon, but otherwise, hold on tight.
Yeah, I got it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Yep. Great call, Immaculate. Yeah, once again, we don't have all the questions. We do have a lot of answers. According to Ross Dellenger's article and Pete Thamel's reporting, they didn't really cover everything. One of the reasons is because nothing is really settled yet. But this is going down the tracks. And it's going to be, there's a 40-day deadline. We're going to be covering this story, just like everything else in college football. It's fascinating. We don't know all the ins and outs of it. We're going to learn as time goes on. I appreciate you all joining. Second live show. We've said it over and over again. You have to have your notifications on. You got to be paying attention. You got to have your head on a swivel. You've got to be a member of our YouTube channel. You got to subscribe, because we can come on live at any time. This was our second live show. Second live show, well over 200 people currently watching our program during these live shows. A lot of very smart individuals in the PATC community letting us know what they believe is what is going on. We talk college football every single day during the week. So stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. We're heading into the weekend. We don't know what tomorrow's going to come. But I'm guessing there's going to be something. We're waiting on some stuff in the courts, right? We are. ACC has a deadline that they have to file a motion in Pickens County. Motion to dismiss. I think that's coming up. We've got so much going on. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And we're heading into the early summer. That means prediction time. Way too early prediction time. We're going to have a whole lot of segments. We're going to be breaking down these after spring portal rosters. We're going to be all looking at it. Some teams have risen in my estimation. North Carolina State. Some teams that might have fallen in my estimation. I'm not going to name anybody for right now anyway. So anyways, I want to thank you all for the incredible donations to help us keep the lights on, your incredible generosity, new members to our program, new cloaking member to our programs. I appreciate it. Great comments once again in the chat. Holy smokes. And of course, the great phone calls. The phone calls, what makes this YouTube channel work. I appreciate the incredible phone calls. PATC community was on fire today, and it's going to be on fire tomorrow. So make sure we could come on live tomorrow morning or during lunchtime like we did today, or we could do a late night show, or we could do multiple shows. Who knows? Here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, we go where the story goes. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.